Hello, welcome back. Sorry it has been so long since we have recorded, but we are back and hopefully to do this more frequently. So, welcome to the Exvangelical Bible Study. I am Sarah from Leaving Faith, and with me, my co host, Justin from Deconstruction Zone. Hi, Justin.
Hello, Sarah. Thank you so much for having me. I know we had a little bit of like a summer pause because life, and we're back. We're doing it. So
Yay!
I'm excited.
Me too. In preparation for this, I read my chapters again and I'm already angry about it. So this is going to be a fun one.
Isn't it funny how like God's most favorite chosen person is so angering?
He is, and honestly, most of the characters in these chapters are frustrating. Like I'm mad at so many people, to be honest, including God. But
Yeah.
fine. It's fine.
It's funny because when we were Christians and God did weird stuff, we would have to make excuses for it.
Right.
Now that we're not Christians, we can just be like, "Oh, he's an asshole."
Like, you're free to say, "Hey, this is morally bad. I don't agree
Mhm.
with this. This is not good." And we don't have to say, "Well, you don't understand the circumstances. It was different back then," etcetera. It's just bad. It's just bad.
Right. Yeah. You could go, like, full on cope and be like, "Yeah, but, well, God's permissive will versus those
Oh,
other."
not the
Okay.
permissive
Alright.
will.
We're not gonna do any of this. We
Oh,
don't need
man.
fancier words to say that God doesn't make sense. So I think we're chapter 28. Let's dive in.
Okay. So, chapter 28. So last time we had the whole Jacob and Esau thing and Isaac was tricked. And so now starting in chapter 28, Jacob is sent to find a wife. So Isaac says, don't marry these Canaanite women. Instead, go to your uncle and marry his daughter. Um I mean, I'm sure we've said this before and we'll say this again, but clearly like cousin marrying is great in this, like, no problem marrying your close relatives. It's fine. It's apparently no problem.
Yeah. I mean, it seems, and I could be wrong. I mean, it seems to indicate that people of the ancient world, they didn't understand the dangers of intermarrying with close relatives. You know what I mean?
Well, I mean, and not even limited to the ancient world, right? I mean, if you look at kind of royals in, Britain and kind of those other Western European countries, I mean, they did this too, all the way, I don't know, through just a couple hundred years ago. So yeah, I think it's interesting what the priority is rather than like the safety and health of the children.
Yeah, I mean, it is funny though because like I'm sure you've heard this with the intermarrying apologetics, which is people who understand the science like yourself would rightly bring up like, well, yeah, I mean, because you lack the genetic diversity, if you have two parents that both contain the same damaged genes, it's like very, very likely that that particular gene will indefinitely be passed down. And so you're just kind of compounding the problems of time. And the Christian apologetic is typically something akin to like, well, God did magic, so it wasn't a problem back then.
Yeah, I mean that makes sense in that worldview, especially if you're trying to say that marrying your close relatives, it's not exactly a moral issue, but a science issue, like a health issue. And so if you just say, well, God fixed the health issue, God fixed the science issue, and then there's no moral issue. Um, I mean, I can understand that logic. While I don't agree with it, I understand it.
Yeah, that's actually a good point that you bring up because like I always look at it from like a scientific point of view, but like to be fair, like there is a moral component to it because later in Leviticus, God tells you not to do it. Like he gives you a whole list of people that you can't marry that are your near kin, which
Oh, our first cousins in that?
I don't think first cousins are in it, but like typically like siblings, parents, uncles. So like they do kind of there's some limitations there.
Can't
It's weird
believe
that you have to say
parents.
that.
Yes, parents. Oh my god. Oh my god. Yep, should not
Yeah.
have to say that. Mm-mm.
And in the ancient world, especially in the ancient Near East, the rules for marriage were a little bit dominated by the rules for some reason always favored what men found attractive. And so the boundaries they were pretty loose boundaries. If a man thought somebody was attractive, whether it was their niece or their daughter or stepdaughter, that they didn't really draw lines that prohibited that. And so,
Yeah.
like, when you read the ancient, literature from Babylon and the ancient Assyrian literature, like, there's these mythological stories where, like, deities are bragging about, like, how many of their family members they slept with. Like, I saw a beautiful young woman, and we made a child, and then I turned around, and my child, was, coming of age, and she was beautiful. And I had a child with my child, and, like, it just
Oh
so,
god. Wow.
all of the literature, because it was written by men, seems to support the fancies of men who could do whatever they wanted.
Right.
How convenient is that?
Interesting. So, wow. Well, and we're about to see that this is all guided by what Jacob finds attractive too. Hooray.
Yes, and the last thing I'll say on Genesis before I get back to it is this prohibition. It's funny that this prohibition is there because, like, if you're just reading the Bible, you're thinking, well, God, yeah, he really didn't want his people intermingling with these other people, which is weird because later he gives them commands that allows them to do that just with other women, not with Canaanite women. Like you can marry foreign women because they're basically your property is not that big of a deal. You just can't marry the Canaanite women. And so in Deuteronomy 7, we see the prohibition against not intermarrying with Canaanites whatsoever. And as far as like I can tell, like the reason why this prohibition is so important and the Canaanite women are emphasized, like because in Genesis, it doesn't say that Isaac couldn't marry a foreign woman, it just says he can't marry a Canaanite woman. The reason why
Okay.
you can't marry a Canaanite woman is for obvious reasons because we're wiping them out. Um,
Why are we wiping them out?
because they're evil, wicked, and bad, and their sin has polluted the land, and now the land is going to vomit them out, according to Leviticus.
Sure.
Right, because that makes perfect sense. Yeah,
Sure. It's
they're
fine.
wicked, polluted people, and therefore we must genocide them. And since we must genocide them, whatever you do, don't intermarry with them.
Right.
And we
Okay.
do that today, don't we? Don't we do that today? Like when countries go to war today, we have to villainize the people we go to war with to gather support. Like remember when the Russians first invaded the Ukrainians? What they do? They went on a huge campaign to paint them as Nazis, as neo Nazis. We
Oh,
just
yeah. I mean, that's how
yeah.
war works, right? Because war is so much harm, right? You are just causing harm all over the place. And in order to get your whole country behind you causing so much harm, you have to convince the people of your country that, oh no, those don't count as people. Right? Like it's okay to harm them because they're not people like we're people. So we can still imagine that we are morally good even though we're causing unbelievable amounts of harm if you can convince people that, oh, they're not really people. It's fine to harm them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Chapter 28. We get a wife. Let's see. Oh yeah, so Isaac is saying that God's going to bless you. Good job. Now go find a wife. So Isaac sends Jacob away to Padan Aram. Did I say that right? Aram?
Yeah, it's a tough one.
Okay. And he's going to find Laban, his uncle. So Esau heard about this, and it says he heard that Isaac said, "Don't marry a Canaanite," and he knew Jacob had left. And so it says here, it was now very clear to Esau. Sorry. That his father despised the local Canaanite women. So he visited his uncle Ishmael's family and married one of Ishmael's daughters, in addition to the wives he already had. Is Ishmael Canaanite?
No, so
Okay, okay,
Ishmael, according to legend, Ishmael populated parts of the Arabian Peninsula very close to Egypt, which is why we see later when Joseph is sold, they seem to kind of conflate the Ishmaelites with the Egyptians a little bit. There's not a clear description of the trading groups, and that's most likely because the people that lived in the Arabian Peninsula close to Egypt were only divided by that little waterway there, and they did have a lot of commerce with the Egyptians.
okay.
And the Egyptians weren't necessarily bad; they weren't evil. Intermingling with Egyptians weren't that big of a deal, but the Canaanites were a big deal because
Yeah,
we have to justify killing them all.
great. Uh, okay. So then we are going to so Esau did his thing, check, done. We're moving on. We don't care about Esau anymore. So Jacob left Beersheba and traveled towards Haran, and now he is going to have a dream. So he finds a good place to sleep and he found a stone for a pillow. That always made me sad.
I know it's rough, isn't it?
What why a stone, man? Like I couldn't think of anything worse for a pillow.
There's some linguistic questions about what he was doing with the stone, um, but the reality is, like, ancient people did rest their heads on stones when they slept because, like, what else do we have? And, like, even, like, if you look at, ancient Egyptian artifacts and things like that, you'll find stones that are carved out with, like, a round, impression
Mm,
into it for your head to gently lay in. Is it possible that they put, like, part of their cloak over the stone and then rested their
right.
head? Probably. Uh, but, I mean, in the ancient world, like, because today everything is like we go to a store and we buy it,
Right.
but, like, in the ancient world, you have to make stuff into what you need.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, kudos to Jacob then. Good job, buddy, sleeping on a stone.
He probably didn't
Um
sleep very deeply, which is why he had the damn dream.
Yeah, this dream, it's funny. I mean, it reminds me of so much imagery in like the evangelical, charismatic kind of modern church. So he sees a stairway that's going up to heaven, and angels are going up and down. At the top is God, and he says, I'm the Lord your God of Abraham and Isaac. And then he says, the ground you're lying on belongs to you. You're going to have a lot of descendants. Um, which again, I don't know why he has to promise this again because he already promised it to Abraham. So, like, this is unnecessary. But then he says, what's more, I will be with you and protect you wherever you go, and I'll bring you back and safely. So, Jacob's like, wow, that was awesome. What a great dream. God must live here. And he takes his stone that he slept on and sets it up as a memorial, which now makes sense, right? A stone, that's a good memorial. That's, yeah, totally. But this is what gets me about this part of it. In verse 20, it says, then Jacob made this vow, if God will be with me and protect me and give me food, and if he will bring me back safely, then I will make the Lord my God. Wait a minute. Like, first of all, already the Lord is not your God. I guess
Mhm,
this is a new thing for Jacob. Oh, I'm supposed to make this Lord my God. And he's not trusting God, right? Like he's
mhm.
not saying God said it and he'll do it. He's saying, "Okay, God, if you do this, if you come through on your promises, then I'll worship you." Which I mean should send like especially modern evangelical Christians into a tailspin because we're not supposed to do that. You're not supposed to talk to God like that, right?
Don't put the Lord to the test.
Well, no, and you're supposed to just automatically love him, and then maybe he'll come through for you, but you're supposed to love him whether he comes through for you or not. But no,
God can't, right? He
this
can't
is
come through for you because you don't have faith.
right. Yeah. Yeah, or he has a plan and he's not gonna come through for you, but it's gonna be okay because he has a bigger plan, and so it's fine,
Mm,
right? There's
that's right. Yeah. It's not that he didn't answer your prayer, the non-answer is the answer.
right, yes, exactly. But this sort of negotiation is completely foreign to modern
Yeah.
Christians.
But and this is one of the reasons, and I think, people in the atheist community will get upset with me sometimes, where I say, like, there's a memory in Genesis that's old. It's very old, and there was a time in which the reason why you had a god was because it was an exchange, it was a transaction. Your god was your god if the transaction went appropriately. You fed and cared for your deity, and your deity fed and cared for you, right?
Yeah.
And so this is what we see in the Mesopotamian texts. This is what we see in the ancient Egyptian texts. This is what we see in the oldest strands of the Bible. It's not till later that you get this idea that, well, you just have to worship this one true God because he's just automatically worthy of worship because there's nobody comparable to him. There's
Right.
nothing like him. Like that kind of nonsense came way later, right? And so there's obviously some sort of archaic memory being preserved here where there's still this transactional deity, a
Mhm.
transactional deity that is reminiscent of like the Bronze Age, not the Iron Age, right? Um, so yeah, this is really a really interesting story, but like if this is part of the biblical corpus, how in the world could a Christian tell other Christians or other people that you can't negotiate with God? What a silly thing to say.
Yeah. I'm glad we're reading this now. I'm gonna bring this up when people in my comments, on my own social media are yelling at me for doing this, because clearly there's precedent to do
Yeah.
this.
And this is not the first. This happens over and
Right.
over again in the Bible.
Right. Yeah, this is super biblical.
Mhm.
Okay. So Jacob negotiates and then he says, this is my memorial pillar, a place for worshiping God, and I will give God a tenth of everything he gives me. Does this passage have any direct connection with modern day tithing, or is this just a coincidence?
This is where they get the 10th. So, I think a lot of people are catching on to the fact that, like, the 10th isn't a requirement,
Mm.
but they still want to use it as, like, a standard where they're like, "Well, they gotta give something, right?" And, like, so, like, if we have to give something, where can we find our model? Well, maybe this is our model. But,
Okay.
like, you've been around long enough, you've probably heard preachers say things like it's unbiblical to not give 10%, like you're robbing from God, right?
Oh, yeah, and some churches, in fact, talk about, like, your gross income versus your net income. Like, you can't just tithe 10% of your actual take-home pay. You're supposed to start 10% of your gross pay, which I think is honestly, like, cruel to people. It's yeah, I have a lot of issue with that.
And, you were in the charismatic movement, I was in the charismatic movement. I mean, how often have we seen people go into a destitute life cycle because they're told, "Well, things won't improve for you unless you give all this money to pastor so
Mhm.
and so." Um,
Right.
so now there's, like, a punishment for not giving the money, which certainly it just doesn't seem to be in the Bible, not until you get to like ridiculous passages later in Malachi talking about the storehouses and whatnot,
Oh, yeah, okay.
where he challenges them, if you will not, if you will fill up my storehouses and I'll take care of you and X, Y, and Z. I forget the exact quote. Conservative evangelicals will know it. Because they have to
Yeah.
quote it over and over again to get people's money.
Yeah, yeah. Ugh, and that's such modern Christianity too of, well, God is testing you, do this really unreasonable thing, and if you don't do this unreasonable thing, it's evidence that you don't love God and God can't trust you. And I remember the last church I was a member of, we had an associate pastor, and this is a small church, not no one had a lot of money in the church, and he wanted to um I don't know, show demonstrate this type of faith. And so he gave this sermon, and I forget exactly why, but he gave everyone in the congregation a $5 bill. Again, this is a very small
Oh,
congregation. And it was to show like this, what can you do with this, like parable of the talents kind of thing. And he had been anxious about doing it, and he basically said that it was in order to give the congregation this money, he had to drain his savings account. And I just felt so like, oh my gosh, like asking people to drain their savings account because God told them to is such a dangerous precedent. Like, oh my gosh. And I think everything turned out okay for him, but yeah, it's such a I think it's just a dangerous message to send to people.
yeah. I mean, it really is. And to be fair, you've seen enough of this. You know the people who are giving you that message, those people aren't sincere. Like those people are stealing from others, like legally stealing from people.
Yeah, on the big scale, I mean, this guy in particular, like this one associate pastor, I do think he was sincere.
Oh.
Um, yeah, I mean, he was not telling people they had to do what he did. More like he was doing it to show God how faithful he was. But I do think the message was still received that way, right? Like this is your pastor, and so you end up modeling your pastor's behavior. But I certainly think anyone who gets on TV and does it, anyone who stands in a mega church and does it, yeah, I cannot imagine that you're being sincere.
No, certainly not. And we mentioned Malachi just a second ago about bringing the tithe into the storehouse. In Malachi 3:8 through 12 is where we find that passage. It literally says that the full tithe is the tenth, right? It says, "Will anyone rob God? Yet you are robbing me." But you say, "How are we robbing you in your tithes and offerings?" And then obviously they're cursed. But bring the full tithe. Well, I mean, the word tithe in Hebrew just means tenth, right?
Mm,
So the full tithe is just a tenth. And so what we could at a minimum gather from this is that like you never need to give more than tenth. Like that's just ridiculous.
right, right. Yeah, that makes sense.
But the goal of the tithe is not to feed the pastor necessarily. The goal of the tithe is to keep the storehouses full. The storehouse is for the people of God. It's for the priests, it's for the animals, it's for the poor, it's for the needy, it's for the widows. And so like this idea that like you just have to give the church all your money because God needs you to give to the church is silly. The point of the tithe is to, and I know Christians get mad when I say this, but part of it is to feed God. Another part is
Right.
to take care of corporate Israel because corporate Israel has needs. Um, so I think people forget about that. Like part of what was in the storehouses wasn't just because God wanted full storehouses. It was to take care of Israel in times of famine, in times of need. Like it was an economic model. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. Almost like how we have taxes.
What about that? Yeah, when people say, well, that God had to let the Israelite make slaves of people because they didn't have like any sort of economy. Like they literally did have an economic model, just like the other nations around them. What do you think the storehouses were doing? Who
Oh
was
my
who
god.
was eating out of the storehouses?
We won't go down this road, but I will say, oh my god, I hate that argument. Like there was no other option. Stop it.
Right,
Stop.
yeah. The all-powerful God had no other option.
Okay. So now we are on chapter 29, and Jacob makes it to his, well, he's going, let's see. He is finally, oh yeah, he arrives there. Okay. So he sees sheep, and the sheep want water, but They have a stone covering the well because they're very polite and they wait for all the sheep to get there before they water them. So he's talking to a guy there and he says, "Hey, do you know Laban? Because that's who I'm looking for." Oh, yeah, we know Laban. How is he? Oh, he's doing well. He's prosperous. And look, here comes his daughter, Rachel. And I actually like that Rachel is a shepherd, which is that normal? Is that a thing? Like, were women allowed to have like occupations like that?
It did happen. So, you could be a shepherdess, and sometimes you could be like a side piece to the shepherding process as well. So, like you might not be a full on shepherd, but you can be in charge of like gathering water for the
Mm,
people at work. And so like a real life example of this, I had a great uncle named Raymond, and he met his wife because he worked on the farm. There was a family farm, and there was a woman that was hired on the farm as just help, and she was like cooking meals, giving people drinks, that type of thing. And they fell in love and got married. But like her role was secondary to the standard farm work. She wasn't
mm,
like raising the cattle or anything like that.
okay.
So like it's possible that she was in the shepherding role. It's possible as well that she was in some sort of secondary role. We don't really know. But
Yeah.
it would seem to me, based on what we're reading in this story, that she was probably doing some shepherding.
Yeah, I mean, she brought the sheep,
Mhm.
by herself, and she was gonna water them, and seems legit.
Yeah, for real. And we see this again in Exodus, where there's like these women at the well that need some help.
Mm, yay. Okay. So Rachel comes, and he sees her, um and Jacob goes over and he just takes away the stone and waters his uncle's flock. And I wanted to ask you about that. Like, is he being rude or is he just saying, like, okay, no, everyone's here. I'm going to be nice and take care of this?
So the way I always read this was Jacob was trying to impress. Like,
Okay.
we got this the stone over the thing, and there's like, man, I'm gonna be multiple people to roll the thing away, and Jacob's like, step aside.
I
Let
got
me
it.
exactly. Let me roll up my tunic here and take care of. And so, I mean, that's kind of how I read it.
Got it.
But I mean, obviously, there's multiple ways it could be read. But does I mean, isn't it funny that we keep having these clandestine meetings of men and women at wells? First with Eleazar and Rebecca. Well, Eleazar and Rebecca's family members. And then Rebecca, and then the same thing now with Rachel at the well.
Well, it's like the water cooler, right? I mean, it's where all the people are. It's where they hang out and mingle, right? I just made that up.
Yeah,
I don't know if that's
it's the
true.
place to be.
So when he sees Rachel, he kisses her and tears come to his eyes and he's like, "Oh my god, I'm here, you're here. This is great." And Rachel runs and tells her dad.
Mm-hmm.
So Laban's pumped. Laban is excited and he says, "Oh my gosh, my flesh and blood is here." And then Jacob apparently just starts working for him. It says, after Jacob had been there about a month, Laban said, "You shouldn't work for me without pay just because we are relatives. How much do you want?" So it's interesting to me that, like, he, I don't know, it's like Jacob is kind of ingratiating himself first. He's like, "Hey, I'm just here to work. Oh, by the way, later on, I'm gonna ask for your daughter, but I'm just here. I'm just gonna help you out because we're family. We're cool."
Yeah, indeed. And like, so if you're Jacob, how do you play it cool here? Right? How do you come forward and be like, first of all, I'm on the run because my brother wants to kill me. Second of all, I kind of need to marry somebody and hide. Like I need a hiding place for a good time. You know what I mean? Like I don't think you could just come up and say that, right?
I guess not. I don't know. I don't know the rules, like, yeah, you tell me what the rules are because all of this is wild.
I mean, the whole storyline is a wild storyline. That even and it's I know it's hard to think about, but, like, remember at this time, Jacob is over according to the story, which we obviously, we know that it's anachronistic, which is why the numbers don't make sense. Jacob's over 70 at this point. He's not a young man. Jacob is over the age of 70 at this point, who has run away from home, from his own brother, and is now seeking the hand of, a young woman, which will become 2 young women, eventually 4 young women. And the whole thing is just it's a crazy nothing about this story is sensible, but to be fair, Laban, I don't know if he had any help. Like, I don't know how many servants he had. I know he had some
Mm,
servants, they show up later, but, like, I don't know how much help he had. Maybe he liked having Jacob around. Maybe he's like, "Oh, this is kinda nice having another big, strong man around."
totally. Well, I think and what happens next is pretty clear that, yeah, he wants Jacob to stick around. Like, he doesn't want
Yeah.
Jacob to go anywhere.
It's like, good help is hard to find, and when you find it, you're kinda like, okay, we need to let's come on, let's get you on
Yeah,
staff."
right. Well, and he says, "How much do you want?" And in verse 16, it says, Laban had 2 daughters, Leah, who's the oldest, and her younger sister, Rachel. And here's the first verse where I'm like, ugh. So it says in my translation, Leah had very pretty eyes, but Rachel was beautiful in every way with a lovely face and a shapely figure.
The NLT, first of all, it's beautiful, but it is certainly creative. Um,
Oh my gosh, it's totally different than yours.
yeah.
Totally
So,
different.
to be fair, the NRSV is doing some interpretation as well. Um, the traditional phrase in Hebrew for Leah's eyes were weak are, like, notoriously ambiguous. A lot of people debate
Mm.
as to what it really means. Some people have even said that her eyes were soft, but it doesn't really that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Some people have translated it as, like, her eyes were, like, not beautiful. And some people I've even heard interpretations, people suggesting, well, maybe she just couldn't see well. She needed glasses. You know what I mean? Like, which it's hard to know. Um, but so all we're told is that, well, Leah's got eye problems, apparently. But Rachel, it says that it's in I forget the Hebrew phrase, but it says that she was beautiful. Easy enough. That's an easy phrase. But then it also says um uh, also in form, like she was beautiful and also in form, which would lead one to believe that this is a suggestion about her body. Like, they're making a general statement about her body. In fact, let me grab that real quick. It's Genesis 29 17.
Yeah, Jacob saw she was thick and beautiful.
Yeah, she baby got back. Let me pop this on screen real quick. So this is a fun passage. Let's see, there it is. And so, like, you'll even see it in, this is, side by side with the King James. So, like, this what you when you're on a website like this, like Blue Letter Bible or whatever, this is Bible Hub, just know that this English translation isn't, like, done by a scholar. This English is just laid over, but from, like, the King James version. But, in the King James version, it says that her eyes were delicate,
Hmm.
which is again, we don't really know what's wrong with her eyes. Like, no one can figure out what's going on with her eyes, but we do have Toar referring to somebody's, like, form, right? And so, like, we're left to believe that, like, this must be a reference about her having a hot body, right? Like, what are we supposed to do with it?
Yeah, I think one of the most interesting things about reading this ancient text is that humans are humans and men are men. We
Yeah,
have not changed that much.
we have not progressed.
Jacob's just like, "Yeah, I want the hot one. I don't care about anything else. Just give me the hot one." And
Yeah,
that's
give me the hot one. But that's exactly it. Give me, and we see the same in like Deuteronomy 21 among the captives of war. If you see a hot one among them, if you see one that's beautiful, you can take her for your wife, right? Like, and all the women, when the women are introduced in the Bible, what we were constantly told, she was beautiful. Why does that matter? Was she
yeah,
awesome?
nope, that's the only value that women have. That's it.
It's true. In
Ugh.
the Bible God really cares, which would it's really funny because, like, if the Bible God really values beautiful women and he knits everyone in their wombs, it means he's, like, purposely cursing some women to be ugly, which is a weird it's just a weird vibe for an all benevolent deity.
Well, I mean, let's be real. Like Yahweh does all kinds of things to people that are, I mean, he curses people all the time. He's got no problem doing that.
Yeah, that's true.
Okay, so Jacob wants Rachel. And this is interesting to me too. He says, "Okay, I will work for you for 7 years if you give me Rachel." That seems like a lot of time. I mean, I guess I don't know. I don't have a lot of context. But it seems like that's a long time to work for someone in exchange um for a wife. And it also, side note, I don't ever want to hear from a Christian that women are equal to men in the Bible. Like, this is blatantly, clearly treating women as property.
Mhm.
Like, I mean, it's explicit. Jacob says, "Okay, I'll give you my daughter." And he says, "I want your daughter. In exchange for this, then you will hand me this." Like, that is property. Like, you're talking about property. No
Yeah,
consent.
didn't
Like,
happen.
Jacob had desire. Like, his
Mhm.
desires were well, they actually didn't end up being respected, but they were supposed to be respected. Rachel's desires completely irrelevant. She's just a piece of property.
Yeah, it's really bad. This story alone, demonstrates, like, how little women's, consent and thought mattered in the ancient world and to the biblical God, because there are 4 women, as far as we can tell, who are treated like cattle, they're treated like property, they're traded and bartered for, it's weird, too, because the serving for 7 years, I think, feeds into this as well, because what did Jacob not have? For some reason, he didn't have any money to, pay the bride price. That seems to be the
Mm.
case, and so Laban, understands that giving his daughter away is a financial transaction. Like, I give my daughter to you, you pay me money. You have
Mhm.
no money, you have to work for me. This seems to be implied.
Yeah.
So, like, from the very onset, there's this idea that, like, I have a daughter, a virgin daughter, and there's value in that. I need you to give me something for this. This is a trade. This is not a
Yeah.
human being.
Oh, yeah. Yes, totally agree. That's yeah. Well, and it's about to get worse.
Yeah, so bad.
So bad. And so it says, so Jacob spent the next 7 years working to pay for Rachel. Um, and in my let's see, I'm so interested. Oh, yeah, it seems the same. It says, but his love for her was so strong that it seemed to him but a few days. Um, Great. And we don't care about her love, but it's fine. So this is meaning he doesn't get to be with Rachel until the 7 years are up, right?
Right.
And so he says, "Okay, it's been 7 years, now give me my wife." And so Laban's like, "Sure, no problem. Let's have a feast." That night when it was dark, Laban took Leah to Jacob and he slept with her.
So your translation left something out. The NLT does this. In verse 21, Jacob says, "Give me my wife that I may go into her."
Ew.
Imagine working for a spouse, a woman, and going to that individual's father and saying, "I've served my time. Let me bed your daughter." That's such a weird thing to say.
It is so weird. Ew. Ew.
It's so bad, and, like and if people are wondering, what marriage was like in the ancient world, like, going into the woman is, like, the thing that made her your wife. That this is these phrases are synonymous. In fact, it says, "Give me my wife," but that's in Hebrew, I'm sure it's some form of isha, which just means woman. "Give me my woman that I may go into her." So, the act of going into the woman is the thing that made her yours. It's like claiming
Ugh.
territory.
Ugh, I'm so creeped out.
It's so bad. This book is so bad.
Ugh. Well, apparently Jacob is like it makes more sense that he's in his late 70s because he's very confused and apparently because Laban takes his other daughter
I know.
and is like, "Hey, go have sex with him." Like, and Jacob doesn't know? Like,
How?
what? Like, it just doesn't I mean, and, I imagine that on one hand, perhaps the sex within an arrangement rather than, a loving relationship is probably a very transactional experience rather than, a fun time, and so maybe his action was very, like, in and out and done, but
In and out?
how
That's what
that's it.
happened?
He's real fast, just in, out, done.
Oh, boy.
But, like, if that is the case, if that's supposed to be, like, the excuse for how he doesn't know that it's Leah, he was supposed to have been in love with Rachel,
Yes.
right? Like, he worked for 7 years, and it only felt like a few days, and here is his woman coming to his bed, and he can't tell her apart from his sister or her sister? Like, what do you mean he loved her? Like,
He did not. He couldn't have.
it's crazy. Just
It's
oh,
it's weird. So, I've heard the apologetic for this. I don't know if you've heard the
I
apologetic,
have
but the
not.
the general apologetic is that, well, the women were veiled. So, because the ancient practice of veiling, so obviously he couldn't see the face, but, like, we learned earlier that he was in love with the form, not the face only, but the form, the body, right? So he knew the body of the woman. They weren't twins. One was clearly older than the other, and, like, you didn't wear the veil while you were having sex for the first time. Obviously, the veil came off in the marital chamber, like, that's the most ridiculous
Right.
thing ever. So, like, there's not a good explanation for how this happened. The ancient rabbis did have some discussion on how it happened. They don't come up with any better ideas.
Mm,
Um, so the reality is, if this story makes sense, it could only make sense if Jacob was just completely drunk. Like and even at that, it's hard to say, like, how drunk do you need to get to still do consummate the marriage, but not so drunk that you can't consummate the marriage.
right, right.
It just
Yeah.
it's baffling to me.
Ugh. And, like, poor Leah, she again, this is viewing both women as objects, and Leah's consent is not important. Laban is just throwing his daughter into someone's bed so Laban can get out of it what Laban wants to get out of it. I mean, it's
Yes. Yeah,
ugh.
Laban does not come off looking good here.
No. He's
Oh,
terrible to his daughter. He's also terrible to Jacob because, like, they had a deal and he's about to renege on the deal. Bad all
right.
around.
It's do you think maybe, so I always like to think of more plausible ways the story could be.
Okay.
Do you think maybe Jacob did know,
Oh.
and then, Jacob just assumed, like, "Oh, he's bringing me the elder daughter because he doesn't want her to go unmarried." That was kind of a shame to have the elder daughter not get married, before the younger daughters. In fact, there was an ancient, I forget where it came from, some part of Europe, there was, there was an ancient, a ritual where, if the eldest daughter wasn't married by the time the last, of the other daughters were married, she would have to dance in a pig trough at the wedding of the last daughter. It was so bad.
Oh my
Yeah,
god.
it's a real thing.
That's terrible.
Yeah, so it's kinda shameful, like, if you're one of multiple daughters and you're, like, the eldest daughter and they can't marry you off, it's like a badge of shame almost, right? So it's possible that, like, both Laban and Jacob, like, they would have known what was happening and like,
Mm,
"Okay, we've got this older daughter, she has to get married off," which means there's only 2 daughters, there's not a 3rd daughter.
yeah.
And so Jacob would have been like, "I get it. You got an older daughter. You can't marry her off. Let's do it. I'll sleep with her, then we'll do the next." Right?
Right, like he was
Um,
getting a twofer all at once.
exactly. I got a twofer, not a problem. Twofer is not an issue, right? Um, I think what happens after that is the part that is questionable because did he think he was getting a twofer and was gonna leave? Or did he think he was gonna get a twofer and then have to keep working?
Mhm. Oh,
I don't
clearly he
know.
thought he was gonna be done,
That's what it sounds like.
he's like, "I did my 7 years." Like, "What are you
Right.
talking about?" Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, and the way it's written is, "But when Jacob woke up in the morning, it was Leah."
Ta-da! Who could have known?
It just makes me think of, like, every romantic comedy ever where, like, or even just any show where there's the shot of the next morning and someone is, like, getting out of bed and they're kinda hungover and they look at the person next to them and they're like, "Oh, shit." Like, again, humans are humans, we haven't changed.
The humans have not changed. We're as a species, we've got problems.
We do.
So many problems.
Yes, absolutely. So Jacob is mad because he hooked up with the wrong chick. And and so Laban says, "Well, it's not our custom to marry off the younger daughter. Wait until the bridal week is over and you can have Rachel too. That is if you promise to work another 7 years for me." So this makes it sound like a week later, he still got to sleep with Rachel, but he was just on the hook for 7 years, like, rather than having to wait 7 more years before he
Right.
could sleep with Rachel.
That certainly seems to be the case.
Okay.
Yeah. He got the twofer, but it's kind of expected he's gonna stick around for a while longer because, well, you got the twofer.
Yeah, yeah. Okay.
He couldn't have been happy about that though. Like that couldn't have been his first choice.
Right, because he thought he was 7 years and done. Yeah, he
That's what
got
I would have thought.
so
Yeah.
he was still tricked into another 7 years of labor. Um Yeah, and
Yep.
I imagine he's not getting paid for that, right? So, now he's working, what, from 70s until mid-80s?
Mhm. Mhm.
That's really weird. Okay. So Jacob slept with Rachel too, and he loved her more than Leah. This this is interesting to me in that I wonder, like, when the text says love, does it mean some other interpretation than our modern interpretation? Like,
Um,
does it mean that he, I don't know, gave her more things or treated her differently or I just I don't know, this isn't how you treat someone you love. Like, love doesn't even
right.
seem to be part of it in a lot of ways.
So, I mean, that does seem to be the case. So typically, when the Bible says that somebody loves something, it comes from the root word, like "leviv," which come is similar to the word for heart. And so there's this idea that like loving somebody is there's some emotion involved because they believed your emotion was in your heart. You know, when your heart does weird things, it's experiencing, it's giving motions or it's thinking. So it seems like they do have some concept of love. It's hard to know what they considered love back then that where is comparable to what we have today. But I've always thought that this nonsense about how he loved one and not so much the other, I've kind of always pictured this as like a commentary on the children, but it doesn't pan out perfectly. So for example, if you have multiple wives, and remember this story is being written centuries after the people are
Mhm.
already dead and these people groups already exist. Like so the 12 tribes of Israel already exist. My initial thought is always like, well, this seems to be commentary on like trying to find a way to slight the other tribes. So like if you're
Mm.
writing this from like the territory of Ephraim or anywhere like that, like if you're one of the children of Joseph, because Joseph was the child of Rachel, the loved wife, right? And
Mhm.
it if you want to be like, well, my daddy didn't, the my tribe is more favored than the
Right.
tribes that came from Leah because obviously Jacob didn't even love Leah. Like there,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, no,
Um,
that makes sense, like, using this is really mythology to explain the history of a people group, like, I can get on board with that, like, that makes sense.
it's kind of like when siblings fight later and they'll be like, well, you weren't even planned. Mom didn't even want to have another kid. One of those situations.
Nice.
Uh, so
Yeah, it is just interesting this expectation of love. Like, what in an arra one, I don't know that much about arranged marriages, so, I you can correct me or people in the comments can correct me too. My understanding is in an arranged marriage, certainly off the bat, that's not an expectation of romantic love. Um, and I would imagine there's an expectation of some type of mutual respect, some type of, "Hey, we're gonna work together," or "We're gonna have we're in some sort of partnership," even if it's a very unequal partnership, s there are still some expectations, just not romantic love.
right.
And so I was wondering, it's like, is what they mean that Jacob was not living up to those expectations? Like, did he not treat her with whatever basic respect was expected?
Yeah, I don't believe so, no. So, as I'm reading the text and it talk about one being loved and one not being loved, I'm seeing this as more of a type of romantic affiliation than anything.
Yeah.
But you and I both know, like, if you've got two wives and you love one and love the other, they're not getting treated fairly.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally.
Like,
I mean, and Leah has absolutely every right to be pissed. Like, she
I
just
would.
gets screwed over by everyone.
Right, and which brings up a good question. I mean, do you think she was that she wanted this to happen? Like when Laban decided he's going to switch out the women, do you think she was like, "Okay, yeah, that's a great idea, Dad," or do you think she's like, What do you? Do I have to do this? Is this really what was
Right.
happening?"
Like, there is no older sister who wants to jump in with her little sister and their boyfriend,
Right.
right? Like, no older sister wants to be in a situation in which she's supposed to be loved by a man, but that man loves your little sister. Like, that is the ultimate, you know, disrespect. Like, I cannot
Yeah.
imagine any older sister wanting that.
Mm-mm. It's really
Yeah,
no,
it's bad.
hard to
It's bad.
imagine. These are God's best.
Mm, ugh, poor Leah. Well, and then it now, like, I so much I don't understand about how these relationships worked because Leah is mad, very rightfully so. And God's like, yeah, you got treated unfairly. Like, let me help you out. I'm going to give you some kids.
Mhm, mhm.
But in order to get those kids, she has to sleep with Jacob, right? Like I feel
Yeah.
like the way that we've always talked about that, like growing up in the church, is almost as if these kids like magically appear from the stork. But no, she has to have sex with him to get them.
Mhm.
And I know that this was just sort of part of it, but it's so hard for my modern brain to wrap my head around that of like, this man doesn't love me. I don't want to be here. And yet I have to sleep with him. Like I can't imagine it, honestly. Like I can't get my head around it.
The story makes sense, like, once you realize that the purpose for these women existing was to be baby makers.
Yeah.
Um, Otherwise, the story doesn't make sense,
Right.
and, like, and they're the words that the are using using? That's not,
Not
the
a word.
words that are used, the words that are chosen and used kind of point to this. Like,
Yeah.
in the narrative, God has to open the womb and, Rachel was barren. Like, this idea that, like, well, women are kind of just like receptacles for the seed,
Yeah.
and, like, their job is to receive the seed and produce the fruit, right? Um, it's just the whole thing's really weird and, um, not to mention unscientific, which is odd because, there were ancient cultures, like the Egyptians by this time period when these people lived, the Egyptians already figured out that, in order to produce offspring, you needed genetic material from both sides, from the man and from the woman. Like, they already knew that.
Interesting.
It's crazy that still at this time period, that's why these people are more like country bumpkins. They just don't know, um, they're not up to speed with what the rest of the other societies know.
Huh. That's interesting. I guess I hadn't thought of it that way, that they weren't understanding that genetic material was required from the woman too. Huh,
Yeah, they had no idea.
that's wild.
You just needed the man to put the seed into the incubator and bada bing, bada boom.
Wow.
We see the same thing in Hebrews, chapter 7 when we hear about Melchizedek and why, the priesthood of Melchizedek is greater, than the priesthood of Levi. And the reasoning is because while Levi was still in the womb, of Abraham, Abraham gave a tithe and offering to Melchizedek the king, which by the logic of Hebrews means that Melchizedek was a greater priest than the priests of Levi, because Levi was in Abraham's loins when Abraham gave the offering to Melchizedek in, Genesis, 14. So there's this idea that, like, all of life is just like the passing down of one seed to another, and, the reason why, original sin matters is because once that one seed was corrupted inside of Adam, it meant all of the reproduction of that seed later down the road would be corrupted. So this is this crazy idea of they have no idea how reproduction works.
Holy shit. I have never heard it explained quite that way, but that's an incredible devaluation of women. Like,
Mhm.
oh my god. Like, no wonder they don't value women. B Wow.
Yeah. Your genetic material is not even important to the people of the Bible. You're literally just an incubator.
That makes so much more sense actually with, Abraham and coming up, I think Rachel does this too, but, like, sleep with my servant, sleep with my slave, and I can have a kid through them.
Mhm.
That makes sense because they thought the whole kid was contained in the man, so they were
Yeah.
like, "Just pick a different incubator, it's fine."
That's it. Yes, the women didn't contribute genetic material to the people in this book. They had no idea that that was the case.
That is that is wild.
Mhm.
Wow.
That's why you could just have a kid with another woman and it was just your kid.
Yeah,
That was your son. That was your daughter.
right. Jesus.
It it ties in too with some of the property rights. Why for so long women didn't really have property rights is because the lineage could only be followed through the man.
Ruby's mad too.
Yeah, get him, Ruby.
Ah,
So the
I'm
women are
intrigued. That's
yeah, the
wild.
women here are gonna be all 4 of them are gonna be treated like incubators. We're in the baby wars now in chapter 29.
I I've heard this and I have no idea the truth to it or not, but, like, um, some part of patriarchal religions was in response to the frustration that men had with the power of women, that women created life and women birthed children, and that this was almost like a misogynistic response of like, "No, you don't. Like, you're not important. You don't have power. We do." And trying to take like that matriarchal role away and reduce women to just incubators and to give all the power to the men because they were
Mhm.
mad that they couldn't create life.
Yeah, and this struggle in the ancient Near East is apparent, and it's obvious in the writings. So if you read the writings from the major city centers, like from Egypt or Ugarit or like Mari, Ebla, some of the like the or even the Phoenician territory or the Hittite territories, women played a much larger role, and like they had their form of science, their libraries and their education, and they valued learning, and so women had a much higher status in these societies because they valued learning and understanding. Whereas what is the same thing we find today. So these large metropolitan city centers have a much more egalitarian idea, and then you get out into the more rural areas where you lack education and learning, and they have different value systems there, and you find that the patriarchy is much stronger where you lack the education and the social structure. And same thing with the Bible. We know that in the Bible times, the people that lived in like the highlands, the shepherds, those types of people, they were considered to be like uneducated, like rednecks of the time period. And the people who lived in like Egypt, they were the sophisticated, intelligent people who did like medical and science and even alchemy. Like they knew what was happening. And so in the Bible, I'm not shocked at all that we have this drastic contrast of the patriarchy is all there is, women are incubators and whatnot, because part of the biblical people is pushing back against some of those larger societies, trying to paint their own picture in the world. Our way of life is better, and here's our way of life. Well, their way of life was rejected by all these major cities. Like even in Egypt, remember, they wouldn't even allow the shepherds to come into Egypt. They were considered dirty and nasty. They had to go to their own territories, right? So they're trying to rewrite the story in from their own viewpoint, and their own viewpoint is horrific.
Wow. Like, my mind is blown right now.
Yeah.
Um,
Because female deities and fertility cults were huge in the time
yeah.
period, just not where the Israelites were.
Right, right. Wow. Well, we are at an hour and at the end of the chapter, and I feel like I'm gonna sit with this, honestly.
It's a
Like,
tough one.
this is I mean, it just it colors my understandings of this whole thing so differently. Um, wow. It yeah, the and it seems to all of that those underlying ideas are still part of especially modern American Christianity.
Mhm.
It's that that still is there. Oh, wow. I'm gonna be thinking. You're probably gonna see me make a video about this. Be like, guess what I just learned?
It's a lot of fun. The one book I would definitely recommend, we've probably mentioned before, like, if you like to read narrative, definitely, read The Red Tent, by, I think Anita Diamant, if I pronounced your name correctly. It's a really cool story that taps into the life of Dinah. That's one of the daughters of Jacob that gets, presumably, raped by Shechem, and
Okay.
but she uses the novel as a way to peek behind the curtains of the ancient Near East and how the biblical people would have thought. And part of that story includes the narrative we're reading right now. Part of Jacob's wives, part of like the baby wars, what it meant to be a woman at this time period. She's telling the story. She's rewriting this biblical story we're reading right now from the viewpoint of a woman who was there. And it's
Awesome.
phenomenal.
Okay. Yeah. I will definitely read that.
It was one of the few books where when I started reading it, and she's not a nobody. She has a PhD in this field of study. She studies the ancient Near East. But it was one of the few books I can say, like, in the last 15 or 20 years, where once I started reading it, I canceled my plans to finish it. It was really good.
Wow, and you don't even read fiction,
No, I don't even like fiction.
which is weird, but
It was
whatever.
it's an amazing book, and, like, I remember it was one of the optional books to read, when I was in, like, Bible college. I was for some course,
Okay.
it was like, "Here's the books you have to read for this course, and here's something you might wanna look into. Here's an optional reading," right? And I was like, "I ain't gonna read no stinking novel." And then at some point when I was talking with my buddy Dan about Dinah, I was like, you know what? The Red Tent does a lot of stuff with Dinah. I should actually just go back and read it because I'm curious to know how she reconstructed the story. And
Mhm.
then I started reading it. I'm like, oh my God, now I can see why this was suggested reading. This is such a good book. But anyways, if you want to know what it's like to be a woman at this time period, I think that book will give you an eyeball into what it was like.
Wow. Awesome. Well, I will absolutely read that, and I will report back.
Yeah. If Sarah disappears for a few days, you know why.
I'm a fast reader, so don't worry. I'll be back
There we go.
soon. Well, thank you, everyone. Thank you, friends, if you made it to the end of the episode. I appreciate it. And we will be back soon. Don't worry. We won't go like a month and a half without recording again. We're back to our normal schedules. So thank you for being here. Thank you, Justin, as always, for your expertise.
Thank you so much for having me, Sarah, and we'll see you again soon.